David Bowie, born David Robert Jones, is one of the most prolific and influential artists of all time. Throughout his illustrious career, he recorded 26 studio albums and over 100 singles, which in total have sold over 100 million copies. In 1972, Bowie released his seminal album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, where he adopted the persona of the titular Ziggy Stardust, an androgynous rock star alien who came to Earth to become its savior by uniting the world through their music, until they eventually succumbed to their ego. The album featured timeless classics like Starman, Moon Age Daydream, Ziggy Stardust, and Suffragette City, cementing Bowie's status as a glam rock icon. The album blended elements of jazz, blues, psychedelic rock, prog rock, and pop, creating a futuristic yet nostalgic vibe that felt truly original and otherworldly. Much like Ziggy Stardust, it felt alien. The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was, and still is, considered one of the greatest albums ever made, but not only did it serve as Bowie's first major step into stardom, it was the first of many indelible marks that he would make on the landscape of music. David Bowie has influenced countless artists. Notable acts such as the Beatles, Jay-Z, St. Vincent, The Killers, Gorillaz, Lady Gaga, Radiohead, and Queen have all drawn inspiration from Bowie's ever-evolving musical catalogue. In no uncertain terms, and without an ounce of hyperbole, David Bowie is a music legend. He also happens to be my favourite music artist. But even when you don't take my bias into account, there are few musicians in the world who have had such a meaningful and profound influence on music as David Bowie. Sadly, in 2016, after a protracted 18-month battle with liver cancer, David Bowie tragically passed away. The music world had lost an icon, but his legacy would forever remain. David Bowie's discography wasn't impeccable. After all, if you release 26 albums over half a century, there's bound to be some down points. But after he died, it saddened me, because not only is he gone, it means I'll never hear any new music by him. He was an artist that transformed his style time and time again, but I won't get to see what he wanted to try next. It also made me think, who will be the next David Bowie? Who will be the person who transforms and influences music for decades to come? The answer to me was simple: no one. I say that not just because David Bowie was an anomaly. After all, there are plenty of other artists out there who managed to perform similar feats as him, but because that's just how music is now. We may have artists that have tens of millions of fans and have billions of plays on Spotify and YouTube and sell out massive stadiums, but it's not the same as what David Bowie did. In the world of music, popularity and influence aren't always intertwined. And although there are many modern artists out there who have had some influence on others, it doesn't come anywhere close to the likes of David Bowie. When considering the landscape of music in the 21st century and the influence of streaming services, it's natural to wonder who will stand the test of time like David Bowie. However, the rapid pace of media consumption and the fleeting nature of discussions facilitated by social media algorithms suggests that future icons may struggle to emerge. The way that we engage with music, film, and television has evolved, prioritizing short-lived trends and constant stimulation over enduring impact. This phenomenon raises doubts about whether any artist will achieve Bowie's level of lasting significance in the future. The nature of how media is produced and delivered to us is cynical, and we now have the conditions in which both artists and writers and other media producers, alongside audiences, are being robbed. Producers are unable to hold the attention of audiences long enough unless they're aided by aggressive marketing campaigns, and audiences aren't given long enough to enjoy something for it to matter before being ushered towards the next big thing. Our media has become disposable, and we should not be okay with that. Not too long ago, I made a video about TikTok and its effects on its users. I mentioned how human attention spans can't be quantified into a valid metric, and that's absolutely true, since our ability to pay attention to something differs from person to person and what we're paying attention to. Some people can read through a handful of chapters of a book in one sitting, some can only handle a few pages. It's all relative. The vast majority of people now listen to music through streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and more. These services offer the most convenient method of listening to music ever made. If there's a song that you want to listen to, then not only are you almost guaranteed to find it on one of them, they're available almost instantly on any device. You can get all this for a very affordable subscription fee, which is about the price of a single CD album. There's also ad-supported listening, but it doesn't offer the same level of control a subscriber has. Streaming services leverage sophisticated algorithms to curate personalized playlists for users based on their listening habits. These algorithms analyze factors such as the genres and songs that you frequently listen to, the duration of the playtime, and interactions like liking or skipping tracks. By identifying these patterns in your listening behavior and comparing it to similar users, these algorithms generate playlists tailored to your taste. This feature allows users to discover new music while also enjoying familiar favorites, enhancing the overall listening experience. Obviously, this is incredibly convenient, especially when you compare it to how people used to listen to music in the past. However, listening to music this way has had a side effect on how we value music and its overall staying power. Consider how music was consumed in the past. A band or artist would release an album or single, and if you wanted to be able to listen to it whenever you want, you would have to leave the house, walk, drive, or take public transport to your nearest music retailer, hope that they have it in stock, purchase it, then go back home and play it on your stereo. There was even an element of risk attached to this. If you enjoyed a single from an artist, decided to buy the album it came from, there was every chance that the rest of the songs on it might not be as good. So you can feel as though you've wasted your money on a CD that has only one song on it that you like. After all, there wasn't any means of listening to an album before you bought it. Outside of purchasing physical media, other methods of listening included the radio, which served as a way of introducing people to new music, or if you were lucky, hearing a song that you know and like. And in the 1980s, MTV came along, which, much like the radio, would play a selection of songs throughout the day, but they were accompanied with video. Music consumption was kind of a crapshoot, with costs and risks attached to it, and it was nowhere near as convenient as what we have now. As I already mentioned, purchasing physical media could be costly for a lot of people. With streaming services, you pay just over $10 for millions of songs, but in the past, you had to pay that amount for something with about 10 to 12 songs on it from a single artist. As things stand now, if you don't like an artist's album, you can simply ditch it and switch to a playlist, knowing that the algorithm has something tailor-made for you, but with an album, that was your lot. At that point, your options were either to listen to an album that you know and love, or stick with your new purchase, listen to it a few more times, and hope that it'll eventually appeal to you. Of course, it's possible for this to happen with a streaming service if someone's willing to give something their time and attention, but with an access to a gigantic library of music, people are much willing to pass on something that doesn't appeal to them within a short window. And since music production has become so simple and cheap that basically anyone can record a track in their closet with a laptop and a microphone, the amount of music that's available to us is overwhelming. It's a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's great that artists can put their work out there with relative ease, but on the other hand, it means that their work gets buried under the thousands of daily new releases. The legacies of artists from the past were formed in part by familiarity with the audience, and that was partly due to the lack of convenience. There's an argument to be made that it's a fair trade since we as an audience benefit so much, but it's been known for a long time that our convenience comes at the cost of an artist's livelihood. Every music streaming service offers pitiful amounts of compensation to artists. To offer some perspective, here's how much a track earns per play and how many plays are required to earn $1,000 as of 2023. One of the most generous services is Tidal, which pays 0.0128 cents per play, requiring 78,125 plays for $1,000, which is somewhat surprising given how it's nowhere near as popular as its counterparts. Apple Music pays 0.008 cents per play, requiring 125,000 plays for $1,000. Spotify is 0.00318 cents, which translates into 314,465 plays for $1,000, and one of the lowest paying streaming services is, well, where you are right now, YouTube. At 0.002 cents per play, an artist would need their track to be heard approximately 500,000 times to earn only $1,000 through YouTube Music. Then there's Pandora and Deezer, which have worse payouts than all of the other streaming services out there. These earnings don't go directly to the artist either. In many cases, most of it goes to the label. Realistically, there's basically never been a worse time to be a working musician that's signed to a label. And for every megastar like Taylor Swift who's earned hundreds of millions of dollars from their music, there are hundreds of thousands of artists who have a few million plays on a streaming service but are earning about as much as a basic yearly salary. The absolute worst offender in the age of streaming music, though, isn't an app designed exclusively for music. It's TikTok, a platform which is universally despised by musicians and songwriters around the world, and for very, very good reason. TikTok is interesting in that it allows users to include licensed music in their videos without paying any additional fees. You can simply select it from their music library and add it. On YouTube, content creators such as myself have to either avoid using licensed music completely or come up with some kind of workaround. If YouTube finds that you're using a licensed song in your video without permission, then you can potentially have to forfeit any and all revenue that would otherwise go to the creator, and it would instead go to the music rights holder, even if it's something like 6 seconds of a song being used in a 2-hour video. So as much as I would have loved to have used some licensed music at the beginning of this video, I can't. I guess I should also take this opportunity to tell you that I actually have a Patreon, and if you want to support future content from the channel or help me have a sustainable income for a full-time YouTuber, any amount that you pledge goes a very, very long way. You also get ad-free early access to new videos too, which, is nice. TikTok has a unique arrangement with music labels though. Unlike on other streaming platforms, TikTok doesn't pay royalties based on how many times a track has been played in a video, but on how many times it has been included in an upload. You see, TikTok usually pays music labels with something called a blind check to allow TikTok and its users to include tracks in their videos, and this is often done without prior knowledge or consent from artists who work for the labels. This blind check is basically a flat fee which allows TikTok to include licensed music in their videos without having to pay out any form of royalties, regardless of how many times a song is heard. To illustrate how truly terrible this arrangement is for the artists who produce the music, let's look at the song Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. After the 1985 song featured prominently in season 4 of Netflix's Stranger Things, it experienced a colossal surge in popularity online, resulting in it reaching number 1 in the music charts across several countries. The virality of the song extended into TikTok as well, where it was included in over 2.4 million video uploads, which collectively had over 5 billion plays. That's billion with a B. It was popular enough that if you browsed TikTok around the time that this was happening, then you were almost guaranteed to hear the song. However, and you can probably see this coming from a mile off, but I'll ask anyway, how much revenue do you think that Kate Bush earned from those 5 billion plays? Yeah, I won't even wait for an answer. You're correct. Zero. Zilch. $0 and 0 cents from TikTok because her distributor, Warner Music Group, didn't establish any agreement in advance for revenue shares or a royalty-based agreement. You might be wondering at this point, how can TikTok get away with doing this? I mean, if you think about it, the labels themselves are kind of getting screwed over in this deal too, since they could be earning some serious money by having more revenue sharing agreements set up, But the answer is pretty simple. TikTok has become so massive and so important to the music industry that they now hold all the cards and have the final say-so on how the game can be played. TikTok is basically the digital equivalent of "I'll pay you an exposure," something that people who work in every creative field will have heard at some point in their career from some cheapskates who use their large, highly profitable platforms to exploit those who are less successful than them. Some people believe that even though TikTok doesn't compensate artists that appear on the platform properly, it's ultimately a good thing, because if they become viral on there, then that can be leveraged into success in other areas, such as more plays on streaming services, album sales, merchandise sales, and more people buying tickets for live shows. While there is some merit to this, popularity on TikTok does not automatically translate to success in other areas, and it most definitely does not guarantee long-term success. Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush may have had over 5 billion plays on TikTok, but by comparison, it had only 400 million plays on Spotify, the most popular music streaming service in the world. Yes, that's a very large number of plays, but it's only 8% of the plays that it had on TikTok. And yes, Kate Bush will have earned a decent amount of money from it, but it's evidence that popularity on TikTok is not even close to being a one-to-one exchange when moving to other platforms or revenue sources. And I know that I am repeating myself here, but it does bear repeating. Kate Bush didn't see a single penny from TikTok after her song was played over 5 billion times. In what universe is that okay? Oh yeah, this universe. The bad one. It's also worth mentioning that this translation will also get worse over time, since only 10% of 16 to 19-year-olds listen to Spotify globally, but a third of them use TikTok daily, meaning they'll be far less inclined to seek out a track that they like on another platform, and instead they return to TikTok to revisit a video which had a song that they like, since unlike music streaming services, they don't have to pay for it. No matter which way you look at it, even though TikTok loves to claim that it serves as a springboard for new and established artists, it's a sentiment that comes with a lot of clauses attached to it, and none of them are in the favor of the artist. It affects their ability to survive as a working musician by cannibalizing their popularity on other platforms, and in regards to what this video is ultimately about, it's helped solidify the mindset that artists and the music they produce aren't worth emotionally or financially investing in. Some songs may reach hundreds of millions of ears, but when an app's algorithm wants you to listen to something else, it'll pull your attention elsewhere. Many artists across the industry and around the world have been extremely vocal about the state of the music industry and how we consume music, and the ways that it is heavily flawed. Musician James Blake made a cover of Frank Ocean's Godspeed, which ended up going viral on TikTok. And it turned out that neither he or Frank Ocean received any compensation from them and weren't credited for the song because it was listed as an original sound. He shared some of his insights by saying, "If we want quality music, somebody is going to have to pay for it. Streaming services don't pay properly, labels want a bigger cut than ever, and just sit and wait for you to go viral." And in regards to the public's perception of music, he later added, "The brainwashing has worked, and now people think that music is free." Blake is sadly correct. Too many people don't see music as something that requires effort to make, or as something which is made by talented people who are genuinely passionate about expressing themselves through the medium. It just exists to accompany meme videos or something for a teenager to dance to on TikTok. It's cynical as all hell to say something like this, or even admit it to myself, since I'm a musician, and at one point in my life I had ambitions to work as one, and I know working musicians personally who genuinely care about making music. But God, does it hurt when I think of something as wonderful and unique as music being treated this way, as something that's just disposable. Although I've mostly focused on music in this video, I want to make clear that it's not the only victim in the era of abundant content. Film and television productions have also begun to feel as though they have less staying power, and even though some shows and movies are huge hits, both financially and critically, once again, it's the way in which we consume them that makes it so that they don't linger long enough to remain in the public's mind, and that method is again streaming. There is a ludicrous amount of streaming services available to us today, so many that it's not even worth listing them all. They each provide their customers with thousands of movies and shows to choose from, and companies like Netflix produce literally hundreds of them each year. Some shows will become extremely popular on places like social media shortly after they're released, but soon enough people will stop talking about it because something new has come out. And audiences who have been trained to be fickle by these companies that release these products practically forget all about the last thing, at least until the next season comes out. Sometimes. Netflix has also pioneered the binge model of content consumption, releasing an entire season of a TV show in one go, compelling some viewers to watch every episode in a very brief span of time, whether that's over a single week or even in one day. With the old model of watching television, people had to watch each new episode weekly, and during the wait for the next episode, people were given space to discuss the content that was being drip-fed to them. Since these shows were aired over the space of months and years, they remained in the public's eye long enough for them to actually become memorable. Binging, on the other hand, is just one and done. You watch it in a weekend, then you move on to something else. Season binging has its appeals because it removes the need to wait for the next episode, and producers encourage binging by including more cliffhangers in shows than what they used to. Many services still do weekly releases in hopes of keeping active subscribers over the span of a season. It's like regular TV, but you choose the time in which you watch it. Netflix's model of releasing all episodes at once, along with the way that the company judges whether a show gets renewed for another season, is extremely flawed though, and contributes to the phenomenon of disposable media. To keep it brief, Netflix releases an entire season of a show. The performance of that show is judged on how much of it viewers watch, but crucially, what matters most to them is how much is watched in the first week of release. If it underperforms, it's practically guaranteed to get axed. Netflix has gained an awful reputation for killing shows off after only one season, and because of this, it's ironically made matters worse, since many viewers have become reluctant to check out a show that they think looks interesting because they fear that it'll just get cancelled anyway, creating a vicious cycle where the odds of a show succeeding are extremely slim. It's safe to say that if you're making a show for Netflix, then don't include a cliffhanger at the end of season 1. You'll just leave people hanging. Many classic shows became classics because networks took a chance on them and renewed them even though the initial reception wasn't great. TV executives are, in general, extremely dumb. But every now and then one of them will have a spark of genius and realize that some shows need time to grow. Shows like Seinfeld, Parks and Recreation, Everybody Loves Raymond, Breaking Bad, and even The Simpsons were all close to being cancelled after only one season, but some executives took a chance and they all became huge hits. Netflix doesn't care about potential, they just want something to be a hit within moments of its release. It's a completely broken model, and I can't believe that they're continuing with this. I'll tell you a secret though, if you really want to make a hit Netflix show, just throw in a scene where there's a dance routine. People on TikTok will imitate it, that'll go viral, then people will watch your show. I mean, hey, it works for Wednesday, even though Wednesday Addams wouldn't be caught dead dancing, quite literally. Then there's the other problem, oversaturation. There's simply too much content out there and not enough time to watch it. Marvel has been especially bad about this. When the franchise was first popular, if you wanted to keep up with the story, you only had to watch 6 films over the course of a few years. But in one of their most recent phases, Phase 4, you would have to watch 9 TV seasons on Disney Plus, and 9 movies. This first phase of Marvel was 744 total minutes of watch time. Phase 4, with all 18 products, amounts to a watch time of 4,113 minutes. That's 68 hours of content, almost 3 days all in all. As great as it is to have all of these choices available to us at any given time, we simply have to admit that there are some critical flaws with this model for both us as consumers and the people that produce the things that we enjoy. The first album that I ever bought was OK Computer by Radiohead. The album had been out for a long time at this point, but I remember hearing the songs No Surprises and Paranoid Android, and since I liked them, I figured that I'd give the album a try. I didn't take to it right away, but after a few listens, it resonated with me in ways that I'd never experienced before. It was my first step on a lifelong journey to discover more music that would speak to me, and to this day, it's still my all-time favorite album, and I can still enjoy it the way I did when I first listened to it. I know that how I listen to music is different to most people now. I do use Spotify, and I have a curated playlist of almost 650 tracks on there, which I turn to when I want some variety, but I still like listening to albums. With music consumption being what it is now, it makes me think, what might other people be missing out on by using something like TikTok or a Spotify daily mix exclusively, by not exploring what's out there or not giving an artist enough of their time to leave their footprint? What if they never have their OK Computer moment because a few seconds of a song wasn't enough to appeal to them? The audience is deprived and the artist is starving. As things stand, the only winners are the labels who are happy to leave musicians in the dust after they've had their moment in the sun, and tech companies who rob them of a living. They created the dagger, which sits in between the ribs of every struggling artist's back, but we're the ones who keep pushing it in deeper. At this point in time, artists can, theoretically, get more exposure than they've ever had in the past, and the industry is still insanely profitable. Musicians are a tool to them, to be used and then discarded once their 15 minutes are up. Physical media may have been inconvenient, but it meant something, and it was an unspoken agreement between you and an artist which symbolized a level of commitment between them, that a CD, tape, or vinyl in your collection now had some place in your life. How often you returned to it depended on how much you liked it, but there was more of a potential for you to love it, and for legends to be made because it had a home. It wasn't just attached to a 30-second video or a daily mix. Music is way too special to be treated in such a way, and we need to recognize that. It shouldn't be the case where artists have to game the algorithm by releasing multiple versions of the same track just to find some traction on TikTok. If we give up on musicians and refuse to support their ambitions, most of the music that we'll hear will either be designed by committee just to reach the widest audience possible, or worse, generated by an AI which leeches off the work of humans. I really don't mean to sound like I'm some boomer saying things were better back in the old days or anything like that, but there is no doubt that the old methods of enjoying music, although often inconvenient, provided artists with the recognition and dignity they deserved. There may never be another David Bowie, but we should still be able to do better for our artists. If there are any musicians or singers whose music that you love, then if you can afford it, try to support them in ways that aren't plays on Spotify. Physical media is sadly dying, which is a problem unto itself. But you can still buy CDs, and the vinyl market is very much alive. Even if you don't own a record player, it's still nice to have something that you can hold, and a lot of vinyl looks really neat. If you can't buy something physical, then Bandcamp is a great option. The lion's share of the purchase goes directly to the artist. Many of them allow you to pay whatever you want, and you can download them as an MP3 or FLAC file. Merchandise can also be a great tangible way of offering your support. Although if you're a woman wearing a band t-shirt, there's a chance that you might have to prove your fandom to a white guy in his 30s wearing cargo shorts who asks you to name at least 5 B-sides. You know who you are, guys. Other than that, go see them live if you can. Some of my best moments in my life have involved seeing my favorite bands live, and I'm sure that you'll make those moments for yourself too. For those of you living in the US, I do fully understand that this is easier said than done, since those pricks at Ticketmaster have a monopoly over ticket sales here, and it can get so expensive that you'll practically have to take out a mortgage just to watch from the lawn. Lots of smaller artists have very reasonable ticket prices though, so if they're around your area, try to check them out. It'll honestly be so worthwhile. Plus, they usually play at smaller venues, which, believe me, is so much better than watching them in a stadium. Music will never die. But if things keep going as they are, it'll soon be on life support. It won't be this living, breathing, ever-changing thing. It'll just be static. Technically alive, but just there, existing in the backgrounds of our lives and unable to remind us why it matters so much. So please, support musicians, support creators, and long live art. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, then like it. If subscribe, then subscribe. Sure, I'd like to thank the patrons that you see on screen right now, and I'd like to offer a special thank you to the following: Texas Lioness, Martin Chung, Femgirl Aaron, MD Bagel, Syndrome Noir, JP, Minty, Malcontent, Jacob Mayer, Zoe B, J Miz, Mech, Beige Circle, Jonathan Morris, Aria Rose, Bailey Grevling, Catherine Pandel, Dan McCrary, Remy Allen, Lizzie Peasy, Grant B, Enrique Gutierrez, Mergogo Fashionable, Alina, R. Atoms, Cami, Sparrowwagon, El Salvador Dali, Tadeo Deoria, Ryan Osterman, Jay, Catherine, Kingme, Vertex, Emily Argentine, Lepaltism, Haplo, Tanda, Dio, Carlan, Patrick McBain, Gina I, Gay Frogs Collective, Ruby O'Connor, David, Kingme, Fishcatch, BestFriendsGang.tv, Locked In, KevU, and Gertz Weinreich. If you'd like to help out, then you can do so at patreon.com/Salari, where you can get early ad-free access to new videos. I also have a weekly live stream here on YouTube, a Discord filled with nice people, and you can follow me on Blue Sky. All links can be found below. Thanks again, you pretty things, and take care.